Hello now, everybody. All right. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Julia. Those are the people who have confirmed to us, but we can tell we have about 7 people present. Um, we would be covering a multitude of topics, and we would try to address questions as soon as possible. If you are going to be here until the end, we would appreciate if you can hold on until we go through everything. If you absolutely need to leave, drop us a question and we'll try to address it as we go on. Or if it's pressing and it's something we're talking about at that moment, feel free to ask a question and we will answer immediately. We're going to run through the application process, but our focus today is to talk about programs Africa South of the Sahara. Ian and I are actually admissions counselors for the region, and I wouldn't say we are full of knowledge. I won't say we can answer all your questions, but I think we're in the best position at this time to be able to clear every concern you have.
But we're pretty good. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. We've been looking forward to this, and I hope it makes a difference that you're here today. We are relying on not just you being a part of the program, but telling the rest of the world or people around you about what you hear today. So like I said, we'll start with the application process generally, and then we'll go into programs or country specifics. And again, for the most part, it'll be general, which will be addressing security concerns, contingency plans, general ideas of what to expect, homestays. So we expect to have conversations around areas of that interest. So the page you're seeing right now is the landing page of the www.sitstudyabroad.com. And if you're an interested applicant, if you look to the top right corner, you see apply or login. So it's where you start your application, and it's where you come back to continue your application once you have started an application. So that's a really vital spot. So once you click there, it takes you to this other page, apply now, where you create an account. This account, I recommend you use usernames and passwords that you remember throughout your period of applying for an SIT Study Abroad program, because it's not just about submitting your documents. You're always going to have to go back on there and submit other documents to us. So please remember that username and password. If you happen to lose it, we're always here to assist you recreate passwords, but please remember this one. Then once you create a username and password, you will get into this page where you have to put in your personal information. And this information is pretty much self-explanatory. It's just questions about your name, first name, last name, things like that. So we're not going to go into those details, but your personal information will be the next after this. And then once you've gone through that process, it's step by step. Just follow every step, read every step, go to the next page. But once you have created that application started an application with us, you're going to be called a started applicant. So your application status is going to say started applicant, and then the questions you've responded to are going to be ticked in green. Every other thing that is blank means it's still expected.
And an important thing to remember as you're applying to SIT Study Abroad is if you see it in orange, as the program in college is here, it means it's a clickable hyperlink. So you can go through to every single one of these on your checklist and make sure that you have completed each section as you go along.
Thank you, Ian. So important information for your application. It's rolling admissions, which means we are accepting applications during a period of time, and chances are there are certain programs that could fill up before other programs, but then we do give you this information in advance. It's not just something that comes by surprise, and it's always available as well on the website. You can see the status of each program.
You'll be able to click here to go through on information about the rolling admissions, and in the Africa region, the South Africa programs and the Tanzania programs do tend to fill rather rapidly.
Right. And then admissions criteria, we want you to have at least had 2 semesters of college level coursework and at least a GPA of 2.5. So basically, this means if you meet this criteria, you generally qualify to apply for our programs. It gets challenging when the programs are full and it becomes a little competitive. Then we start looking into other aspects of how good is your essay, you know, whose GPA is higher, what does your reference say, what does your school say, you know. So, but then the earlier you apply, usually the better. That's really the word we're putting out there for you. Yeah. And what happens next?
So once we've received all application materials, we then take 2 or 3 weeks before we take the application process, where we send your application to be read by the admissions commission committee. Then we need to make sure that you have submitted everything properly. So after you click submit, your application will be held at an incomplete stage. And then it'll take 2 or 3 business days for that to change over once we make sure all the pieces are in. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, you'll hear from us via email. 99% of our communications are via email with our admissions decision. Should you be successful, you then have 2 weeks to reserve your space on the program, which includes a long list of confirmation materials. And when I say long, it is long, but it's very doable.
Right.
As part of all SIT programs, we have undergraduate research taking the form of either a capstone, which is a research paper where you go out in the field, collect your data, synthesize the data, and then put together a 20 to 30-page research paper, which you then present to professors, your peers, and any professionals that may be invited to your presentations. New to SIT study abroad programs, and it's very important you check with your admissions counselor here in Vermont and also your school back home that internship credit would be an option for you, but we also have internship abroad. So internship abroad, you are the ones that let us know after you've checked with your home school that it is something doable, because all home schools don't approve internships, or some don't, most do, some don't. And then you work through and you click this, I would prefer to pursue an internship, and you work through all the data that you see on this screen. Now, again, it's an important reminder, consult with your college or university study abroad office prior to submitting your application, because we all don't like that phone conversation where we realize your homeschool actually doesn't approve internships and we have to give you a call and say, we need to move you back to the independent study project. Now, part of it is we want to introduce you for a homestay letter. Homestay letters are part of every application, but on programs that have a language requirement, we ask for it as part of the application.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
like
it's
the language.
Yeah, exactly. So with a lot of Latin American programs, you have to write it in Spanish. But you don't have to write it in Arabic for the Middle East. Right. In fact, it's very unusual for a student to be able to write a full letter in Arabic when they apply.
Well, in some of our Africa programs as well, we do have the French requirements. Any program that has a French prerequisite will require you to write your homestay letter in French. But most of our programs don't have that prerequisite, and you will not be required to. Yeah.
When in doubt, always check with us.
Right.
And also, please make sure you put a photo in your homestay letter.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, save your homestay letter and any documents as a PDF. It fits better into our system here in Vermont.
Right. And letter of references, usually we used to require 2, but now we only require 1, and we request that it be an academic reference. So that means anybody who can speak to your academic performance. We would accept references from, because we understand some colleges are so huge, you may not have that personal interaction or relationship with your professors. I would imagine you can at least contact a TA, right? So yeah, so definitely we want an academic reference. We don't want you to give references of maybe your parents or people you've done holiday jobs with. So
or a coach or anything like that.
Right.
So now it's also important once you fill all this out that you click submit. Because if you fill all this out and click next, the person never receives the email to write back to us.
Write it back, right.
Yeah.
And approval of participation. So again, you realize that applying to go study abroad with us is as important as getting permission from your school to go abroad with us, because we do offer you credit, and SIT Study Abroad is an accredited institution that would be giving you credit. But then you need to make sure your school is going to accept the credit upon your return. So for us to see that as proof, we need your school to approve your participation on the program, which means they're going to be happy with you, or they're going to be happy with receiving the credit SIT will give you. So you just need to click there, and it will give you the name and email address of who's the responsible person in your school, and then you send the request. They automatically receive that request, and it comes back to us directly once it's filled out.
And again, you have to, once you pick the counselor's name out of this drop-down list, which will 9 times out of 10 pre-populate with names that you recognize from your school, you click send request. If you don't click send request, it won't go out. And the SIT does not make those requests on your behalf.
Right. And then scholarships, again, SIT gives need-based scholarships, which means you don't need to write an extra essay. Once you apply to our programs, you qualify to be evaluated for a need-based scholarship. So you just need to indicate by ticking that box that you would like to be considered for a scholarship, and if any of the additional considerations apply to you, please do indicate. Once you fill out your FAFSA, make sure you add SIT Study Abroad to that semester. You're going to be abroad with us, because the scholarship office needs that information from your FAFSA to evaluate your qualification. And then, of course, the application fee coupon code is not something we typically have. I know in the past it was given to alumni, but if you do show up on any of our fare tables at your college, there is a card which, if you fill out, you automatically will get your application fee waived.
Now, if you are prompted to pay an application fee, that means you do not qualify for an application fee waiver. And you will see that if you click Proceed to Next Page to submit your application. If you qualify for a fee waiver, it will go immediately to incomplete application with all the check marks here. If you don't qualify for a fee waiver, you will be requested to enter a credit card or a debit card for the $50 application fee. And you'll see here that now all of the sections are checked off. That means Karin and I have filled out our applications properly. And then it says letter of reference, approval of participation, passport copy. The academic reference is still requested. The approval is completed, and the official transcript is required. The passport copy here is just as a reminder to you that you should have a valid signed passport or apply for one at this time, especially for the countries that have quite a extensive visa process.
Right.
Here are some important dates for you. Right now, we are currently accepting applications still for summer of 2017 and fall of 2017. And then on April 15th of 2017, we will already begin accepting applications for spring of 2018. So keep these in mind, and they're always available at that website below.
Okay.
Now,
program specific. Well, at this point, maybe I'll open the floor to questions. If you have any questions about the application process, because we're going to go to talk about country-specific information at this time.
Okay.
And again, we're going to touch on that generally, and then talk contingency plans in general.
Let's see.
Oh, so we have a question from Julia.
Julia, what are local attitudes in Madagascar towards Westerners? Well, Karin, you were in Madagascar.
Yeah. But again, Julia, that's a good question. But I would like to get through to the topics of conversation or the different, except if you need to leave, Julia. But I'll address that now. Again, let me put it simply. The world has become really global. It's really a global village at this time. Honestly, there is really no place in the world that has never seen a foreigner. That's one thing to keep in mind. I did not leave it. Okay, thank you, Julia. I understand. There's really no place in the world that has not seen a foreigner, and I will tell you, Madagascar is full of foreigners, full of expatriates. Most of their huge businesses are actually handled by foreigners. Like it's no stranger to foreigners. So if that's just your question, like what's their attitude to foreigners, they are used to receiving foreigners. Madagascar is like the vacation destination. It's such a beautiful place, and I have been there personally, and I never felt, I mean, of course you feel out of place when you're different or when you go to somewhere where you're completely, it's completely a new place to you, but I think you are for the most part more fascinated than the locals are. It's just you're going to find out, all right, their every day, due to the culture shock and all that, is completely different from yours. Or your attitudes or the way you walk or the way you dress, of course, stands out. But they are no strangers to foreigners. So it's a really welcoming environment. In fact, all of our 3 ADs or 4 who we work with in Madagascar are all foreigners. One of them is American, one of them is British, one of them is Ghanaian, and one of the ones who no longer works with us was American as well. And these people are married to locals and live in Madagascar, have lived there for so many years, have homes there, travel wide, very easy to assimilate, like as a foreigner, and move there. A lot of the students who went to our Madagascar program have ended up going back to Madagascar for further research.
And speaking as someone, I have not been to Madagascar, but I have lived in Southern Africa for about 4 years in various different countries. The hospitality of that region is legendary.
Right.
And they will make you feel like you belong very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
So Julia, I don't know if that answers your question. Do let us know if anything else comes up, and contact me personally if you absolutely need to leave.
And if you are interested in Madagascar, Karin is the admissions counselor for that program there, both the summer and the fall semester program. So as we go into some programs, I'll actually let Karin talk about these programs because we have 3 spread across Tanzania and Kenya. And we're going to try and go to our web page on that and see how well our PowerPoint skills are turning into.
Right.
Let's see. Bear with us one moment. And there it is.
Okay.
We're talking about Zanzibar first.
Yeah.
And now you should be able to see this. This is our Tanzania Zanzibar Coastal Ecology and Natural Resource Management Program. It's based in Stone Town.
Yeah. And generally speaking, you will learn about the diversity and natural resources in Zanzibar, Pemba, and the coastal Tanzania through seminars and hands-on learning with the academic and professional experts in that region. And I know you get to visit the Pemba Island, Zanzibar Island itself, the Mafia Island, and according to my understanding, there's a new island that our new AD who started there a semester ago has introduced into the entire plan, and he's very interested as well in archaeology, whale shack. Yeah, he says Mafia, Pemba, and Zanzibar. And
Mafia Island is the new one because it's a little further away. It's the most southerly in the Zanzibar archipelago there. And you also do spend some time on mainland Tanzania.
Yeah, in Dar es Salaam, which is the capital. You actually get to work with the university there. You spend some time actually there on campus for a couple of weeks, I think. Okay. And then, so you study sustainable management of the region's coastal forests, coral reefs, and vulnerable fauna.
Now, what language would be studied there?
Well, there's going to be Swahili. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the major language that is spoken. But again, the language of instruction for your major courses is going to be English. Okay, but then you do take Swahili, Oki Swahili as it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, and another highlight I'll tell you at this point is samples of independent studies students have had during this period has been around turtle conservation in Misali Island, oral histories of Zanzibari fishing village, a survey of invasive species of Jozani forests, environmental impacts of hotels on Unguja. And then careers that students have gone ahead to do after the study have been around special assistants at the Office of the General Counsel in Washington, D.C., research assistants, that's graduate students, assistant field directors at Johns Hopkins University, fishery technician, community organizers. So there is just a wide variety of careers that you can get into. So again, all of this information is on the website, reason why I will not go into any further detail, and we are here to ask or to answer any questions that may come up after this.
And it's also important to know that there are alumni testimonials on every page as well. Mm-hmm. And you'll see this blue tile here with the thought bubble emojis there, where you can click on it and it'll bring you to the form to click to contact former students.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the Arusha program out in Serengeti?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So yeah. So that aside, we also have the Tanzania Wildlife Conservation and Political Ecology program, which is also one of our very popular programs and turned to fill up really fast. This program, again, generally examines the dynamic shaping and contentious balance between people and the wildlife in northern Tanzania. It goes to, it's actually, the main office is in Arusha. You do go to Moshi. Moshi is not very far, but it's just around. You visit the Serengeti. Basically, you do a lot of traveling around the country. You go to stay in the Maasai villages. You visit the Serengeti National Park. You do a lot of safari. This program is peculiar as in when you're picked up from the airport, you literally leave the airport into safari that night. So you actually start your field study immediately. Your orientation is in the fields. So you
right there.
Yes, exactly. You may not get a chance to inform your parents immediately that you've arrived, but SIT does take the responsibility to tell any concerned parents whether their kids are there or not, But yeah.
And also there are Facebook pages that you can follow of each program. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
Let's go.
And again, there is details on coursework and careers that have come up. And then Kenya, real quick as well. It's one of our, there's a lot of revamping going on in Kenya right now, and I would say Kenya would rank as one of our comparative programs because you get to go to Rwanda and to Uganda. So you actually touch 3 different countries during this trip. Do I have a question here?
Julia has to take off, so
okay,
thank
Julia.
you for participating.
Yeah.
And we have not touched on Cameroon yet, but we will. If you want to reach out to us, we can also send you this presentation.
Right. So Kenya, we're really excited about. Personally, I'm excited about Kenya. I actually get to go to Kenya next week. I am excited to go see the program as much. When I talk to students about Kenya, my big sell is you getting the opportunity to work with the CDC Research Foundation, and they're very focused around, I would say, neglected or abandoned tropical diseases, which have been overtaken with a lot of attention. And not to say the attention doesn't need to be there, but with all the HIV, AIDS, and cancers, and all of those big name diseases have covered all these tropical diseases that are a huge problem in this community. So you get an opportunity to meet these people, work with them. Actually, we have a new academic director for the program who worked with us as one of the coordinators with the CDC. Now he works directly with SIT. His name is Steve Wandiga. He is great. I'm so excited to meet him, and you should look forward to working with him as well. Again, there is every detail available on the website. Do we have a question?
What sort of organizations are worked with on the Kenya program? Example, NGOs, clinics, and this is so from Sophia Abdul Raham, which is a name I recognize. Hi, Sophia. We've been communicating.
Right. So, up until now, I don't think we've done internships with Kenya. No, well, but it's not, a question is not about internships, it's organizations.
So,
I know the biggest one is the CDC.
So if
Kenya's Association of People Living with HIV and AIDS, yeah.
If you look under the internship section here, right. Sophia, now you do get to go to different Kenya medical research. It's called KEMRI, and the CDC. They're trying to set it up. The Kenyan government is trying to set it up as a CDC of sorts, and our CDC is helping with them. And they're really looking into getting hard research on HIV, TB, and malaria. Malaria is a disease that is rampant in many parts of Kenya and Africa and is not getting paid attention to very much anymore. So you also look at AMREF Health, Africa's projects in Kenya as well. USAID and the Red Cross are in Kisumu, and the policy research centers at African Population and Health Research Center.
And actually, Kisumu is like one of our new, very new, not a new destination, but our new main hub. It used to be Nairobi, but we're trying to go away from all the major city centers. You're still going to spend a lot of time in Nairobi and do a lot of work in Nairobi. But, and I think in Nairobi, we work very closely with the American University.
Yes.
You actually share their campus, and they have a very interesting resources we probably are privy to. So Kisumu actually is the place where you're going to spend quite a bit of time. It's a really laid-back, beautiful little town, and we are actually trying to get students to make Kisumu our port of entry. You know, of course, you have to arrive in Nairobi and everything, but we're trying to like go directly to Kisumu to start there. So I hope that answers your question, Sophia. And on to Uganda.
On to Uganda, and I was actually in Uganda last year visiting our programs there. And in Uganda, we have one program based in Kampala. Kampala is known, Uganda in general is known as the Pearl of Africa. It was actually Winston Churchill who gave it that moniker back when it was a British protectorate. But Uganda and Kampala is right on Kisumu, where our Kenya program is based, is right here. And Kampala is on the north of Lake Victoria, right there. So this is a program really geared towards people who are interested in development in the developing world. And Kampala is really a darling location for international donor agencies right now because it's stable. It is a multi-party democracy. While there is a dominant party, it is a multi-party democracy where elections have been happening on a regular basis. And you really look at the social and political and environmental issues of development right there. I mean, Kampala sits right on a bluff right above Lake Victoria. And you also get to travel to Rwanda. You're in Uganda. You travel all around Uganda, which is a gorgeous country as well. This is really the Great Lakes region of Africa. And you travel down into Rwanda, and you also look at how Uganda has developed after the Civil War and the Lord's Resistance Army in the north, and you look at Rwanda and how they have come back and developed into what many people call the cleanest country in Africa.
Right. Basically, what Ian is describing is going to technically cover our summer program as well, because that's really what the two concentrations are for the summer program, Uganda and Rwanda, and even our Rwanda program. So basically every program is going to be looking at a comparative angle based on the critical global issue of concern.
Yes.
But it's really hard to ignore these major conditions or situations in each of the country. Just like the Kenya program will be stopping in Uganda and Rwanda, as much as the Kenya program will be talking about health issues and looking at Rwanda and how far they've come since after the genocide, especially with health systems, it's inevitable to discuss the peace-building activities that have taken place, and going into Uganda and seeing how the move from Rwanda into Uganda has affected the entire region. And I think that explains why they're getting into the whole East African
comparative model, because these 4 countries where we have programs are so tightly unified.
Right.
And we are actually looking, I will cover that topic in 1 minute. We are actually looking into changing the visa process, because you do go back and forth between those countries, and we are looking into getting an East Africa visa process. Now, Sophia has another question, just full of questions today. I understand that in Uganda, the Development Studies Seminar, you focus on 1 of 4 subtopics at the end. I will show you where that goes into it here. And Dr. Charlotte Mafumbo here is one of the most connected women in the entire country of Uganda. So if you have certain development topics that you're not quite sure if you would be able to do it, send me, as I'm the Uganda admissions counselor, send me the information and I will send it off to Dr. Mafumbo and she will be able to get the ball rolling. Now, the Development Studies Seminar here, excuse me, the Development Studies Seminar, really, you look through excursions at different aspects of the development, and when you click on the syllabus here, this is where you really look at the different components that make up development, whether it's health or education or access to fresh water or tourism, because tourism is really coming up in Uganda. Now, and one quick thing about the language, Luganda is the one that we teach on a regular basis, but as Swahili is gaining attention here in the region, we also are able to organize Swahili as a tutoring that you can do outside of the program. Let's go back here. Sophia, do let me know if that answered your question. Otherwise, you and I can discuss that offline. So Rwanda we did cover a little bit, so I'm going to move on to the South Africa sections here. South Africa is Africa or the world.
I would like to say something about Rwanda quickly as well.
Yes.
I didn't mention as well, we did talk about Tanzania and South Africa as being our very competitive program. So is Rwanda, especially in the spring. And Rwanda actually would start having internships only in the spring. In the fall semesters, they will not be able to do internships. One of the reasons why we have chosen to do internships in the spring is that it does give you that leg into the summer, to do, because a lot of organizations in Rwanda, and again, Rwanda is a really growing economy. Forget the genocide and how it's come far, but it's a beautiful city to be in. So there's a lot more than just what our programs have to offer. And again, we don't want to, hash everything, because we can totally describe how beautiful each of these countries are, but the information is available. What I want us to get to eventually, Ian, is our contingency plan and security. So just keep going with South Africa.
All right. The South Africa programs here, this first one, Community Health and Social Policy, is based in Durban, which is a tropical city on the east coast of South Africa. Our South Africa programs are each capped at 25, and they do fill up. Multiculturalism and Human Rights program, right there, the second one, is based in Cape Town, and you can see Table Mountain. The third one here is our most comparative of all of our South Africa programs. It's based in Durban, but you do get to go to Swaziland and Mozambique, which are two very different countries in regards to how their political transformation has gone. South Africa is now a multi-party democracy on paper and a dominant one-party state in practice. Mozambique is a multi-party democracy on paper and a dominant one-party state in practice, and Swaziland is an absolute monarchy.
That sounds like most of Africa. I would let you all know that.
Okay. Now, the Education and Social Change program is for people who are really interested in experiencing educational processes in first-hand experiences. We do get you into elementary schools and grammar schools in South Africa, and you really look how the education system in South Africa has gone from a very fractured race-based education system under apartheid into the more unified Rainbow Nation single education department for all South Africans. The last one here is really a STEM-focused shelter innovation lab. It's based in Cape Town, 4 weeks, and you look at how South Africa has used shelter, a basic human right, as both a political oppressive tool and a political liberating tool. Now, if you are interested in South Africa, please reach out to me. I don't want to delve into them too deeply because I could talk about it forever. Madagascar here, we have 2 of the programs.
Yeah, and biodiversity and natural resource management is also one of our really popular programs, and in fact, all of Madagascar is a representation of what our programs are there for, because they have all these rare species of whether plants or animals or sea life. Also the traditional medicine and healthcare systems. Again, it's going to be touching the basis. And again, not to belabor the point, I already talked a little bit about the beauty of the country and how receptive they are based on one of the questions our students asked. I am definitely here to answer any specific questions. We are kind of running out of time, reason why we are rushing through this. I don't want it to be super long, but talk to me specifically if you needed to go to any of these programs. Now, somebody was particular about Cameroon, and we come to Cameroon now.
That is Madison Matthews.
Yeah.
So
development and social change, and we can go onto the website. So the program, as you can see, has actually it went through a revamp about 2 semesters ago, and it's even growing a lot more. So actually, from next semester, students get to go to France from Cameroon, to just because France is like one of the colonial masters, or one of the biggest colonial masters in Cameroon. The country is 80-20% French, English respectively. So the French had a big portion of Cameroon and still have a huge influence in Cameroon, and we do have a lot of movement from Cameroon to France. So it is going to be an interesting study to do a comparative understanding of how that economy is affecting Cameroon even to this day. So you're going to receive, of course, intensive French language instruction. However, French is not a prerequisite for this program. So you don't need to have French to come to this program. I remember visiting the program about 2 semesters ago, and I got to see students who came into Cameroon with 0 French, but at this point, which was halfway or almost 3/4 of the semester, were able to sit through presentations in French. So that's just to tell you the advantage, or what sitting in an environment where a language is spoken could have on you, even if you sat in a classroom to learn a language. You know, being in that space is always a plus. So that's it for Cameroon. The biggest highlight is that from the fall semester, students get to go to France.
And Karin is actually from...
I am Cameroonian. I'm from Bamenda in Cameroon.
Bamenda is right here in the Anglophone section.
Exactly. So yeah, there are a lot of interesting topics to study in Cameroon, especially now with a lot of political movements and questions going on. I would say if you were interested in development and social change, this is really the time to be looking into these questions.
And Cameroon is a very stable country for the region,
yeah,
and it is often touted as Africa in miniature.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you. I'm proud to remember that.
I pay attention to what you tell me.
And I mean, I don't even say that as often as I should. Yeah. So Senegal and Ghana now are a peculiar programs at this time. Senegal has been in hiatus for like, what, 2 semesters now, and it will be for 3 semesters come the spring of 2018, because Senegal and Ghana are going to run from the spring of 2018 at this time. We are revamping both programs, and the reason why we did that was for nothing else but enrollment. So we thought it was time to do a revamp, and of course some of these challenges we face with enrollment can come as a result of, you know, regional challenges we've experienced. Like West Africa in general struggled right after the Ebola virus, and Senegal being one of the countries that were partially affected by the virus, of course, where we could see the impact or the effect all the way through now. So Senegal from the spring of 2018 will be called Global Security and Religious Pluralism. You know, yeah, I don't know if you want to open that for us. And
yeah, I'm going for it right now. There we go.
Yeah, I think there's also an interesting move with Senegal. I think they'll be having an international excursion to Morocco.
Correct.
So one of the highlights as well for the Senegal program is the excursion to Morocco. So as you can see, most of our programs, if we can manage it, we try to include the comparative angle, because again, the world is becoming a global village. You really can't go ignoring or isolating any of the issues, especially around growing economies, which are in Africa for the most part today, Africa and Asia, I would say.
And an interesting tidbit about Morocco, because I'm also admissions counselor for our Middle Eastern programs, the highest percentage of international migrants from in Morocco are actually Senegalese, right, because they have the Francophone connection. Exactly. So that's why we bring them up there.
Right. So yeah, there is that going on, and then the whole topic of religious pluralism is really it's very vital to the region, because Senegal at this point is going through a huge shift. Like you can see, they've really opened up their borders. They're doing a lot of development. You know, there's a lot going on, and they have a really diverse religious community, but yet they coexist in such peaceful, you know, there's such peace in their coexistence. So you're going to be looking at exploring international and regional security institutions, explore religion and politics in Morocco's unique urban cultures, and develop new skills in French or Wolof. So Wolof is actually one of the major local languages spoken in Senegal, and of course French is the national language. So you get to choose the one to focus on. And Ghana, Africa in the 21st century, and as we all know, Ghana is like one of the most outstanding democracies in Africa at this point. And again, this program has been going through a revamp for quite a bit. I'd say about 2 years now, and they're ready to launch. So for right now, it's going to be Ghana, and our main focus is going to be, our landing point is going to be in Accra. You gain a new perspective on Africa, engage with Africa's present social and political realities through the interdisciplinary approach, study Africa's changing landscapes from Ghana, the first country to achieve independence, as a matter of fact.
1954.
Right, which in Africa we're talking 60s. Then gain proficiency in spoken Asante Twi, which is also one of the wide spoken local languages. There are of course other languages. And then go on
go back up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on multiple excursions through Ghana. You're going to actually see the entire country and choose between an internship or an independent research program. So there is Ghana. I have been to Ghana. It's a really vibrant environment. You know, we still have, I would say, the most civilized people around Africa in Ghana. You know, very respectful, you know, still very pure when it comes to, you know, the spoken English language and attitude, and, you know, they're still the really pure people. They're the calmest in West Africa, as I call them. You know?
The calmest in West Africa. Mm-hmm. So while we take some questions here, I wanted to leave this up, and I also wanted to talk a little bit about our contingency plans, because As we all know, Africa is very often in the news and not very well represented. There is a book out there that I keep in my house on my coffee table. It's The Smiles of Africa, and if you're interested in Africa, really go out and look at that, because it's all the beauty of Africa in a book.
Yeah.
But Uganda does have a multi-party democracy, and they do elections, but there's always contention around the elections because the current president has been in power since I was 3 years old, and I am now in my mid-30s. So he's been around for a while, and there was some elections last year when we had programs there. So what happened is one of our programs, which we have since folded into our Rwanda program more, it went out into the rural areas because it was very urban-centered based, where any unrest was foreseen as happening. And then our Rwanda excursion for our program that's based in Kampala went down to Rwanda and stayed in Rwanda for longer than the 2 weeks that we normally do, 10 days, 2 weeks. We stayed down in Rwanda for the duration, and when we got the all clear from the U.S. Embassy in Kampala that the time for any elections unrest had passed, they took the students back from Kigali up to Kampala.
So the one thing I'm going to say about contingency plans and security and all that, just like Ian has said, not in any way trying to belittle what the information is out there, but I want you to always keep in mind, news is highly sensationalized in these regions. That is like something that is done not to belittle the information in any way, because we do follow that information closely. We work closely with the U.S. State Department to see what they are saying. Once you register on our programs, we actually register you with the U.S.
The STEP program.
Yeah, the STEP program, the U.S. embassies in each of the countries you go to. And top on SIT's priority is the students' security. What I usually tell students and parents for laughs when we talk is, if you don't believe we care about you, at least believe we care enough about our programs and want them to continue running for as long as possible. And if we take you in harm's way, that hurts us as an institution. So top on our agenda is your security. So we do look at these things, and of course, at the end of the day, it's a decision you would have to take and be comfortable with to take a risk. When you decide to do anything in the world today, even in the United States of America, quote unquote, the most secure place in the world, it is a risk. I can give you 5 reasons every morning why you shouldn't get out of your house in your neighborhood, in whatever secure place you live in America, but that's not going to keep you home. Either way, you're going to get out. So yes, it's a risk, and unfortunately, I cannot assure you that nothing would absolutely happen. But however, we do take your security seriously. If we decide we're going to run a program, that's because we have used our better judgment with our connections in country and what we are working with to take to decide that we can do this. If we think we cannot, we would not. So our contingency plan, as much as there are written documents out there, depend on what time it is in the semester. If you were just arriving at program, the way we would make the changes would depend on if you were mid-program or if you were in your independent or internship phase. So I will give you an example. Once, when the Ebola virus was going on in Senegal, the day before students were supposed to leave for Senegal, the first, unfortunately, only Ebola case was reported in Senegal. So what the information we sent out to students, parents, and schools was, we have decided as an institution to go ahead with the program or the semester. However, if you choose to withdraw, we would accept your withdrawal at that time and return your deposit, because it's a huge risk at that time. But we did have a plan in place. The program had 3 options. And again, if you can see how we have structured our programs, we are represented in almost every region of the country. And we do more than one thing and usually similar themes. So the program in Senegal could move students. Again, we're thinking, why did a student join Senegal? For the French language or for the arts or whatever reason they wanted to. We also didn't want to change the group dynamic. We wanted to keep them as a group. We could move them to Cameroon, but last-minute moves to Cameroon would be a challenge because they needed visas. So Cameroon was not an option. Rwanda could be another option because there is still some components of French in Rwanda, but Rwanda couldn't take all the students, so Rwanda was no longer an option. Madagascar was our next and only option, and fortunately could take students at short notice and could take the entire group, and they wouldn't have needed visas on entry at that time. So that was the plan at that time. Again, when the students got into the country, we kept them in confinement and did our clean investigations to make sure all of the homestays had absolutely no communication with the person or the hospital who was housing the person who was reportedly Ebola positive. And then before the students went into homestays, we invited healthcare professionals who spoke with both students and parents to and host families, and made sure they asked all the questions of concern, made sure they were clear about SIT's policy, clear about what was expected of them. And the entire semester, students did not go to the hospital or work around healthcare institutions. They had a healthcare professional at our premises in case a student needed one. And that semester went by completely free of any drama. Sometimes students even wonder why they make a fuss of things so much out here. But again, we have to go, you know, at any point I tell every parent, your concerns are very, very valid. And I'll give you an example which is also out of our realm. Ian has given you a practical example of what happened in Uganda. In Tanzania, Zanzibar, we had a similar situation after election, and Zanzibar was one of the contentious areas. It was during their independent study phase. The academic director at the time wasn't comfortable having students in Zanzibar, so he moved them to Madagascar to complete their independent phase. So there is a lot that we can do as an institution, and that's the reason why you're enrolled in our healthcare
and
insurance once insurance once you apply to our programs. Is actually not an itemized. It's not itemized, so you can't get out of it. You're automatically enrolled in our insurance once you sign in, because we have control and we know exactly what we need. Reason why we insist every student gets on our insurance.
Now, like Karin said, when things do happen, while we really are focused on the academic integrity of our students' programs and things along those lines, we will pull the program if we have to.
Right.
For example, in my portfolio in Tunisia, shortly after the revolution in Tunisia, the U.S. Embassy issued a directive that all non-essential personnel left the country. And speaking of left, I see Hannah King has to go. Thank you very much for attending, Hannah.
Thanks, Hannah.
I will naturally look forward to hearing from you. There. So now, when a U.S. Embassy issues a directive that all non-essential Americans have to leave the country, we have to pull our students out. So we brought all of our students over to Toulouse in France, where there is a big Tunisian diaspora population. And that is where the rest of the semester took place.
Right.
By the time the fall semester started, we still had not received all clear from the Tunis embassy. So we started the Tunisia program in Morocco, where SIT Study Abroad and our parent organization, the NGO World Learning, has a big presence. So while we do want to continue the thematic programs in their locations, if we move, we will move. So Eliana, John, it seems like people have to go. Yeah. So if you have any more questions,
do ask us. And quickly, I'll mention as well about homestays. Again, this is based on the kind of concerns I get usually from students. As you all know, SIT's programs are very, cultural immersion is like the big thing on our programs. And the only way, or one of the biggest ways we can immerse you into any culture usually would be to put you in host families. So these host families are honestly not people who we pick off the streets one day to the other. These are people, for the most part, we have worked with over the years, or even if they are new volunteers, because these are volunteers in the community whom we only support, give them a little stipend to be able to support you while you're there. We do work with them, we do check their homes, make sure they meet the standards we require, and make sure they understand what we expect them to do with our students when they are in host families. Ian, do you have anything to add there?
Not right now. I just see Sophia with another question here. Major thematic differences between Cameroon and Uganda development programs.
Right.
Uganda development programs, I'd say, look at the mid-level down and from the community level up, but it's very regional specific, because Uganda is viewed as a center, an economic center for East Africa, which is culturally very different than West Africa.
Right. Again, talking about West Africa again as a regional difference when it comes to Cameroon, you know, we have different issues to focus on, and they could definitely still be at the same level, meet economic growth to lower and lower up. However, you would see that there is a lot of French influence and political, what's the word I'm looking for?
Prowess.
Yeah, you know, around how economic growth is affected based on all of these things. So Uganda really has still like the British system, and you can see how that, if you had a chance to look at both systems, you would find, I would say, a lot more problems in the West African system because of that French influence, how it has affected the system generally. However, Cameroon in particular is also, like Ian mentioned, the safest country in the Central African region. Cameroon is geographically in West Africa, but politically in Central Africa. And being in Central Africa and being the hub for most of the international organizations working around Central Africa gives it a lot of power, you know. So all of that influence, you're able to study it in the program in Cameroon and be able to see how it has affected. And again, Cameroon being a really small country has a huge diversity. We have over 250 local languages in Cameroon alone, reason why English and French are like our national languages. But you go to East African countries where they have Luganda and Swahili spoken nationwide, so they do have a local base, but we don't have that in Cameroon. There is a huge disparity, and again, you can look at how that has affected development generally. So there are a lot of, it's basically the same theme, but there are a lot of natural and natural economic and political differences. Yeah.
That is exactly right. And I think we're coming to the end now. So if you have any other questions, please take down the email addresses of those you see up on the screen. If you're Africa-centric, you'll be talking to either myself or Karin.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for showing up. And of course, we do have this down recorded, and if you were particularly interested, we can always find a way to get back in touch with you with any specific questions. Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much for joining us for this seminar today.
All right. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.